All right, you now have the ability to redeem a free month, and it's going to cost 250 points. I tested it out, so I can't do it again, but this button will be green. Just click that. It'll ask you, are you sure you want to spend 250 points on a free month? You would click yes, and you won't be charged for your next billing period. So yeah, we're going to start it out at 250 points. I imagine that will be relatively easy for people to get, but if it turns out to be more difficult, we can always lower it, and we're going to reserve the right to raise it if it turns out to be too easy. But we're just going to start it out at 250 and just kind of see how it goes. But the primary way you're going to earn points is by entering data. And you can either enter, basically the way I've been entering data, at least, is you can either do so by entering a match, or you can enter a resource into the database. So I'm going to kind of take you through that relatively briefly. And we're going to start out by entering a match. So the match that we're going to enter for this example is one that I've already entered, but it's Gordon Ryan versus Roberto Jimenez. So basically this match will already be in the system. So when I click enter match, it's going to say, hey, we already have a match between Gordon Ryan and Roberto that happened on this date. And basically, if Gordon and Roberto have a match in the future, you would click enter a new match, and you would just enter a new match on a different date. But since we're not doing that, I'm just going to click edit just so I can just kind of show you real quick the information you put to enter a match. So it's pretty thorough. Some of this information, like affiliation, will already be populated for you if these athletes are in the database, but other information you're going to have to fill out. And basically, as we scroll down, you'll see that there's this section here for notes. And this is basically freehand notes that you can write in any language that you want. But for the time, it's best that you put the time of the video, not the time left in the match. Because the way this is going to look when people use it is you're going to have the match showing up here. If there's a YouTube link available, the match is going to show up here. And there's going to be the notes that you took in any language that you want down here. And this time of 241, if you click it, it will take you to 241 in that video. But if you were to write 29:57, it wouldn't do much good for this functionality. So this time should reflect the time of the video, not the time left in the match. And the other thing with these notes is we have to have a way to basically tell our system that we're making a new note. We're not continuing the note. This is supposed to be a new note. So the way we do that is when you're making these freehand notes, you distinguish that there's a new note by putting a comma. So when you're writing the sentence, don't use any commas. Otherwise, it's going to just assume it's a new note. So separate each note with a comma. So generally the way it will look for me, like it kind of groups it up into one paragraph, but when I'm entering it, it'll look something like this, where I'll write the time, I'll enter the note, I'll put a period, comma, and then, press enter, and then put the new note, period, comma, and then down and down we go until we complete the match. But everything else is kind of relatively straightforward. It's a lot of detail. Not everything's required, so don't feel like you have to enter everything to enter. Like, don't feel like you have to fill out all the fields, to enter a match. But the more the better. And every time you enter a match, you'll get 10 points. And then you get taken to the sequence page, where basically instead of the freehand notes that you just took, you basically kind of translate that into predetermined terms that our database can more quickly and accurately filter through and organize. And I just find these sequences to be very, very helpful. If you're interested in the terms we use, you would click this guide, and it would take you to the labeling guide, where you can see the different positions, different variations of each position, and things like that. So basically on this sequence page, you're taking a screenshot of the starting position and then a screenshot of the ending position, and you're filling in different terms of the starting and ending position. And then down here are the movements that resulted in the change. So you can see we started in half guard at 26 minutes and 23 seconds left in the match, but 6 minutes and 15 seconds into the video. And start Gordon has a crossface and an underhook. You only get 2 options here, which, is a bit limiting. For example, you could say, like, maybe his head position is on the far side instead of a crossface, but you can only choose 2. So that's a limiting factor. Just pick the 2 that you think are most relevant. And then Gordon is in chest half guard. Roberto doesn't have any shield or anything, and he's tripoded. And then when we let this play, you can see Gordon inserts a butterfly hook and frees his knee. He does a cross knee cut to get to side control, right? So we let this play to 26-14 is what I did initially. So then we take a screenshot here of the ending position. So at 26-14, well, I guess we could talk about the movements. He inserted a butterfly hook and then he did a cross knee cut. And all of these movements are currently here on the labeling guide. But again, we're working on a better way to do this. But I don't like the labeling guide as a long-term solution. But anyway, then he completed the guard pass to side control. And you can see we assigned this sequence to Gordon Ryan. It was a guard pass sequence. When it's a submission sequence, you'll do a submission. When it's a sweep, you'll do a sweep. When it's a takedown, it's a takedown. And we have different types of sequences. But this sequence was a guard pass sequence. So we assigned that sequence to Gordon, since he's the one doing the guard passing. And then the ending screenshot is side control. We put the times, and he has a crossface and underhook on the far side, and his hips are in Keisagatami, right? We have different lower body configurations. We have different upper body configurations that you can choose from. Now, because this is sub only, you're not going to have the ability to do it, but you can add points, and you could add guard pass points, if you wanted to. But again, we're not going to do that. And then you would click save. And then it'll take you to this page. And from here, you can add another note if you want. And you can see I said, if they're not posting on your hip, tripod and pummel and butterfly hook to help free your knee for the guard pass. And this is basically what Gordon talks about in this instructional. And you can see I've linked quite a few examples of what Gordon was talking about in this instructional. But you can click, if you had another resource that you wanted to add, you can click add a training resource. And basically what this means is you're adding something, like some resource for someone to study to learn what just happened in that sequence. So these are the current resources that are associated with this sequence, but you can also click show suggested resources, and it will give you other resources that have been entered that go from half guard to side control. So if the starting and ending position are the same, you'll see that here, and you can apply that if it applies to your sequence. So if you click apply, it'll auto-fill all of this in, and you would click add resource. But I'm not going to do that because I don't think this one applies to this. So I'm going to click back to sequence. And then if I wanted to enter a sequence directly after this one, I would click add next. And when I click add next, it auto-populates the ending position of the previous sequence as the starting position. And then we could say, so Gordon goes in knee on belly, right? So then we could say Gordon Ryan, position entry. That knee on belly, we would go to the labeling guide. Maybe we go position, control F, knee on belly. We find it right here. It's a lower body variation of side control. So Gordon Ryan went from a standard side control with Keisagatami hips to a side control at 26:09 left in the match, but 6:29 on the time. He still has that crossface and the underhook on the far side, but now he's in a knee on belly situation. And then maybe you could say he did like a knee drive to get there. And then you would click, it's kind of complicated because I already entered it all, but like generally you just go to the last one and click insert after. But you can see the times of all of them here. So 26:09 is the time I'm kind of looking for right here. So it would probably go after this one, right? He goes to knee on belly after this one. So I would click insert after. And now you can see this was the sequence we entered, where he went from half guard. He was a guard pass sequence. He went from half guard to side control. And then we can click these arrows and toggle to the next sequence. And then we went from side control, knee drive, to knee on belly. And then when we want to add a training resource to that, we can. There are no suggested resources. I don't think I've entered too many of those types of sequences. But yeah, there are no resources currently, but if there were, they'd be here. But if you know a YouTube video, or you know Danaher talks about this in his side control instructional or whatever, you could go find that section, enter that resource, and now it's linked with this sequence. Yeah, and then you just go down the list and enter in a bunch of sequences. And if you wanted to enter a sequence that wasn't like directly associated with the previous sequences, previous sequence, you would just click all sequences, and then it'll just leave it blank. It won't auto-populate the starting sequence. And then you can see all the sequences that you've entered so far, and if there's a training resource, it's going to be green. And every sequence that you enter, you get 10 points. So again, each match, like this one has 37 sequences already in it, not to mention all the resources. And each resource you enter, you also get 10 points. So this match alone probably like gave me like 700 points. So like I said, I think like, I'm not sure because I'm the one who made the system. So obviously it's easier for me, but we'll see how it goes. But I think 250 should be relatively easy for people to get. And if you think there's a term missing from these drop-down menus, you would just go over here, click feedback, and you can suggest a term here. And if it's truly a term that we don't have in the database, then we'll add it. So that was a very quick overview about how to enter matches and sequences. And now we're going to move on to talking about how to enter training resources. And basically what I mean by that is you taking notes on an instructional or YouTube video that you've watched. But it's not as simple as just, writing notes on that instructional, because every note that you take has to be associated with a sequence. So I'm going to use this as an example because I thought it was a good video and I did it this morning. So it's fresh in my mind. But this video by Nathaniel Cho, where he interviewed Greg Sodders, at the beginning of the interview, Greg was talking about a game he likes to play from a seated versus standing situation. And the goal of the standing player is to force the seated player down to a supine position. So I can't just take a note of that without first finding a sequence that illustrates what Greg is talking about. So generally what I do is I go over here to group sequences. And again, my goal is to find an example of what Greg was talking about. So our starting position is going to be open guard. And generally let's go for this one. Open guard to open guard, it's a position entry, not guard retention. So we'll view, and then this is the starting position, this is the ending position. So we want the starting one to be seated. We want the ending one to have a variation of supine. And we want maybe this right here. This is the one I picked this morning. So then you can see this one is the game. So I can view it, and it takes you to this video, and you can see the note that I pushed. The game is called Push, Pull, Pin. Greg talks about it here, and here's an example of it happening in competition. So basically the way this would look is, like the way you would enter it is you would find the sequence that you wanted to associate with what Greg was talking about here. Then you would scroll down, you would click add a training resource, and you would fill out the different type. So for this situation, it was a game, and the instructor was Greg. The title would be the title of the YouTube video, and then it asks for the link. So you'll just paste the link. It'll ask for the time. It'll ask for the chapter. And you just fill out that information, and then you would check this box. It's a free resource. It's on YouTube. And then you write your note. And as long as that note and everything here is exactly the same, when you add that sequence, you'll see multiple, like eventually, I just said this morning, so there's only just one sequence here, but there could be like 8 down here associated with this game. And then you could basically go here, view all. Now you get taken to this page, right? Where I was just going through this video and I did, this is the one that we just went over here, but I also took a couple other notes as well. And again, when I'm watching the video, basically I'll watch him talking about this idea that our orientation is dependent upon the task we are trying to achieve. And then he gives an example from outside ashi, talking about when you're on your outside hip, that's for finishing. And when you're on your inside hip, it's probably a better idea to be there if you don't have the threat of submission already available. So I was like, okay, cool. I need to go find an example of that happening. So I came over here to group sequences. I was like, okay, we're talking about outside ashi. So starting position would be outside ashi. And maybe we just look at outside heel hooks. And then I watched some of these, and I wanted one on YouTube to show you guys. So this one I thought was pretty good for describing it, because basically you could see Gordon goes from his outside hip to his inside hip to get heel exposure, and then back to his outside hip. So it describes what Greg was talking about. So now that I found a sequence that reflects what Greg was talking about, I would click add training resource, and I would fill out all the information and write my note, which is exactly what I did this morning. And it's why you see this training resource here listed under this sequence. And when people when people are going through this YouTube video, they're going to be able to see examples of this happening, of what he's talking about happening in competition. So basically, I've been doing this for my YouTube videos as well. So like when you're going through my north-south passing video, I basically like took notes on everything I said. And then if you click view, you'll be able to see different examples of what I was talking about happening in competition. So this is the functionality. Unfortunately for the data entry side, it's not as simple as just like writing the note that you want to write. You have to first watch the instructional, basically pause it, go. I think the best way to do it right now is through group sequences. Find an example that you think illustrates what Danaher was talking about, or Lachlan was talking about, or what Greg was talking about, and then link that note with the resource, and then it will show up. Yeah, so that's how to enter a resource. That's how to enter sequences. That's how to enter matches. And you can redeem the points that you earn for a free month. But yeah, really interested to hear your guys' feedback. Again, if you want to leave some sort of feedback, you can always do it in the Discord, or more formally, you can do it here, where you can suggest a term, report a bad search. So you're searching for something that's not coming up. Or you just want to give us some sort of other suggestion, just click other, and yeah, submit your feedback here.